Batman Arkham City is an absolute classic, having completely evolved what came before in literally every way to create the best Batman game ever, at the time, in my opinion. The first game is known as being one of the best superhero games ever made, so did Rocksteady improve upon their version of the Cape Crusader, or did they disappoint us with something mediocre at best? Rocksteady wanted a brand new setting to work with for their sequel, coming up with Arkham City, the perfect extension from the small Arkham Island that came before. While not quite Gotham City with its grand scale and endless reign, it's perfect for what this game is going for, and that's a Batman fully roaming a city environment in an open world. Arkham City is a hostile prison orchestrated by Hugo Strange, with Bruce Wayne as one of its inmates. Hugo Strange makes his first appearance in the series with his villainous plot to rid Arkham of crime and prove he is superior to Batman once and for all. Batman is in his element, slowly uncovering the plot behind this mysterious Protocol 10 that he's heard so much about.
Protocol 10? Never heard of it.
Rocksteady had already teased the entire concept of a city-sized prison in the first game, but in 2011, they actually pulled it off. I like the idea of going for another smaller scale game before doing the grandiose Gotham City. Next-gen hardware was on its way in just another 2 years, so it would feel like a missed opportunity making an entire game trying something that's so technically demanding in scope and choosing not to do it on the best hardware possible. Also, a quick side note, I'm playing this game on PC with a texture overhaul mod that boosts the resolution of the game's textures and increases the quality of the game's shadows. I highly recommend it, and I'm going to leave a link to the mod in the description of this video. Check it out. What we ended up getting still holds up. I memorized the entire city just by playing the game and only opened the in-game map to mark side missions. The city's 4 main areas have at least 1 or 2 landmarks that make navigating to each section of the map really easy to remember. Rocksteady followed the modern open-world game philosophy of keeping a landmark visible at all times, which really helps when trying to figure out where to go and what to do next in this ruined landscape. Destroyed infrastructure and shattered glass completely litter the streets of this closed-off section of Gotham, and if you listen close enough, you'll hear the sound of Deadshot's rifle connecting with its target. While it's not Gotham City, Arkham City does have its own unique touch to it that feels like its own thing, and not a lesser version of something Batman fans have wanted since the very beginning. It's wild playing all of Arkham Asylum for the last video and gliding in these small spaces to this game's more open environments. Sure, the city streets aren't as populated as you might wish to fill those open spaces, but there's still plenty of fights to get into and side content to get distracted by that make this city feel just full enough to maintain the illusion. And look, I get that they wanted Strange's Wonder Tower to be surrounding you and always be visible so you always feel like you're being watched, but did they really have to make the map this strange horseshoe shape around it? You can't cut through, so to get from one side of the map to the other, you have to do this curve all around the map when it could just be a straight line. It just makes traversing the map tedious sometimes because you always feel like you're moving around the map and not through it. I love the Panopticon inspiration that Rocksteady is going for, but I mean, look at this. How is this fun? Okay, I'm exaggerating a bit. This map's great, but I definitely prefer Arkham Knight's Connected Islands. It's common Arkham critique that this game has the best story out of all 4, with some flip-flopping between City and Origins. But is that really true? Well, unlike Asylum, this game has more elevated stakes. Batman's poisoned with Joker's Titan-infected blood he got from injecting himself with the formula in the ending of the last game, putting them both on borrowed time. Your condition gets worse and worse over the course of the game, and Batman gets pretty close to death about halfway in, literally seeing the gates of heaven. Some sections of the story use this plot element pretty well, with characters commenting on his appearance as the game's story goes on. After Joker poisons you in the first hour of the game, there's this sense of urgency. You're dying, and it's reflected in Batman's character model with these veins pulsing on his face that I always liked. But even if Batman finds the cure, he still has to deal with a whole new host of villains and ultimately deal with Hugo Strange and shut down his prison for good. Death is literally the least of his problems. The story uses its villains a lot better with a more active presence that engages them in both the A and the B plots. It's not as focused as the last game, with more elements in play, but that's not a bad thing. I think the extra plot elements make this game's pacing more dynamic and interesting. It's a lot less go here and go there, only solving one problem at a time for the entire course of the runtime that the first game had a lot of. Robin also makes a cameo, being voiced by Troy Baker, who actually voices a lot of characters in the Arkham series. Early sections in the game have you invading the Penguin's Iceberg Lounge to save Mr. Freeze so he can manufacture a cure. That leads you to seek out the League of Shadows for a dose of Ra's al Ghul's blood. Bruce Wayne's love interest, Talia al Ghul, comes in at this point in the game, and I honestly think that this part of the game is really just not interesting. Their dynamic is very bland, and you're just kind of expected to go along with it. It just feels unnecessary in what's already a pretty busy story involving so many characters. The game's linear structure frames all of these elements together into the ultimate Batman narrative, with some of its most impactful moments I'm choosing not to spoil for you guys. If you know, you know. However, I am going to start spoiling this game's side content. I'll give you a few seconds here, but skip to this point in the video if you don't want to hear it.
Needing that anymore, will I? Oops. Spoiler.
What's Bane doing here? How'd they even transport him in this place? And who's that guy following me around telling me that dark days are coming and Gotham will burn? Is that Bruce Wayne? And who's ringing that goddamn phone? Hello?
I'm over here stroking my dick. I got lotion.
I love this game's side content so much. Everything is just so creepy and out of your control. The Mysterious Watcher was always one of my favorites because I never knew anything about this character when I first played this game in 2011, so I was just as invested in this mystery as Batman was. He's even present in the game's intro, which I never knew until a few years ago. This side mission ends with that warning of the future, which will get explored in the next game after he reveals himself to be Azrael, who takes over Batman in the comics. I really think the Identity Thief side mission is the best in the game. You essentially go around the map finding these bodies, each missing parts of their faces, with bandages covering their injuries. The investigation leads you to a hideout where you discover all of these murders have been strategically orchestrated by none other than Thomas Elliot, wearing Bruce Wayne's face. You see, all of his victims have facial features that match Bruce's face, so that's why he's cutting him up. Hush has his comic-accurate look too. It's awesome. Okay, can someone in the comments clear this up for me? Is this supposed to be Hush on the table here? The doctor here implies his face is cut off and inside the container, but Hush is walking around wearing Bruce's face, so how is he here? The doctor says that he cut his own face off, so he can't be one of Hush's victims. I don't get it. Can somebody explain this in the comments? He also ends up leaving Arkham City, and the side quest unfortunately ends here. The mysterious phone calls all around the map are the work of none other than Victor Zsasz, who's killing anyone that answers the phone. For Batman, he challenges you to reach another ringing phone across the city with a strict time limit. Your reward for reaching it is his backstory, which is actually extremely interesting and involves other characters in the story. The phone calls are basically glorified races that honestly aren't particularly challenging, especially after acquiring the Grapple Boost upgrade accessible early in the game that just lets you boost over ledges to keep your glide. With this upgrade, you can pretty much cheese these races to reach Zaz's hideout and defeat him in just over a minute. Here's where we get to my main issue with almost all of these side missions. All of the game's side content follows this principle of being really interesting, but they miss the mark right at the finish line to tease the next game. If a side villain is defeated, it's usually this extremely underwhelming and quick one-and-done thing that just feels bad. I think the only one that works like this is Azrael's, because he's not a bad guy leaving bodies behind just to finally get caught in the next game. Azrael stuff feels more intentional because it's well-written, high-stakes material that's clearly intended to end as a tease for the next game, promising Batman's death. Like I said, I love this game's side content, but they're clearly not without some flaws. The first game's combat is the perfect blueprint for superhero fighting, but it lacked in overall variety. From enemies to gadgets to special moves, clearly more could be done, and Rocksteady absolutely delivered. We have more enemy types alongside existing ones, with stun sticks returning from the last game, but also shield enemies that can only be defeated by your new aerial slam attack. These one-armed thugs appear in some encounters that command respect, as their attacks cannot be countered, but only evaded. So players have to choose between focusing on the big guy first, or everyone around him. Or you can use your new electric gun to cause him to hit his own guys. Just be sure you're out of the way first. Ninjas from the League of Shadows show up around halfway in the game that aren't countered the same way as normal thugs, creating additional combat variants that was so needed. Combat scenarios are far more engaging and interesting because of these changes. More decisions to make in combat adds a necessary complexity that makes each encounter play just that more differently. More gadgets to work with in combat also benefits the stealth too, which is just as well innovated on. While the encounters here, overall, still play the same, with a lot of stealth takedowns, but there's certainly a lot more tools to use now. Try out your new disruptor to render firearms useless, or the freeze grenade to just outright disable an enemy for the rest of the encounter, unless they're freed by their friends. Getting caught by enemies prompts you to pop a smoke grenade as a get out of jail free card with a long cooldown period that basically makes it useful once a fight. Throwing it to ambush a group of enemies is great too, unless the enemies are wearing thermal vision goggles, which let them see through smoke, but also lets them scan gargoyles to reveal your position if you aren't paying close enough attention to the enemy.
On this wonderful achievement. As I look at the screens in front of me, I can see that we are rapidly approaching fatalities of
Enemies are using jammers to block your abuse of detective vision, providing more choices to make. Should you take out the jammer guy first and finish the encounter the way you're used to? Or do you finish it handicapped because the jammer enemies are often protected by at least 2 guys within our arm's reach? Wait, hold on, that guy's got night vision goggles, maybe I should jam his gun first before I ambush the others. You see my point, there's a lot more now to consider. Stealth, just like the normal combat, plays more like a dance with tons of room for improvisation, but the game's tried and true strategies still work with great effect here, so all of these changes just feel like soft add-ons. Maybe I've just played these games for so many years, but it's just too easy. However, all of these innovations create some pretty fantastic boss fights. Everybody knows about the iconic Mr. Freeze fight, so I'll only go over it briefly. This is the best boss fight because you are limited from the very beginning. You can't fight him head on, so stealth is the only option. Each time you stun him, whether that be by disarming his gun or even just a normal stealth takedown, he adapts, which renders your methods futile after just one use. Use the floor grates or railings to get the jump on him? Well, now he freezes all of them, so you can't keep using them. Using every gadget you have access to, as well as the environment, is the only way to beat him. Well designed is an understatement. It's perfect. I honestly kind of wish the normal stealth sections forced a player to use every method they have access to instead of making it kind of optional. Encounters can be even more varied if Rocksteady just tipped the scale a little further against the player, but what do I know? I'm not a game designer, but I do love talking about video games. Other boss fights are great too, with tons of spectacle and new mechanics to spice up the gameplay a bit. Ra's al Ghul isn't going to give up his blood without a fight, and the Penguin is going to trap you with his pet Solomon Grundy if he can't take you out himself. One thing I've yet to mention is this game's DLCs, which are pretty solid. You have your standard bonus costumes to choose from, but also additional characters with Catwoman, Robin, and Nightwing. The former two have their own standalone missions, with Catwoman's story intertwined with the main game, and Robin's is a standalone experience taking place after the ending called Harley Quinn's Revenge. If you have Catwoman's DLC, you actually start the game playing as her before the main intro, which is a neat little subversion of expectations. Her later missions do break the pacing of the main story a bit, but her content and playstyle is fun enough that it's not the worst thing ever to play as her over Batman. You can switch to her at any point after beating the game to mess around in the city and collect Riddler trophies that are exclusive to her. I like her traversal more than Batman's. She has way more horizontal mobility that just conveys a better sense of speed. Robin's story acts as the game's epilogue that's so short it plays more like an excuse to play as Robin rather than something worth his character. No joke, I beat the entire DLC from start to finish, including cutscenes, in 40 minutes. For what it is, it's okay. You spend way too much time though doing busy work, like interrogating 3 thugs around the steel mill for a password to a locked door, a segment where you don't even play as Robin for. I mean, why? The story behind this DLC is good, and there is clear effort put in to make things as distinct as possible, but there's just not enough quality gameplay to really set it apart past the new playable character. Robin does have his own unique moveset and gadgets that are pretty fun, and he's also playable along with Catwoman and Nightwing in all of the game's challenge maps, so you're getting good value if you choose to buy the game's DLCs. Overall, Batman Arkham City is one of the best sequels of all time, taking every mechanic from the first game and adding to it alongside more content and more features. It's a formula Rocksteady dared to improve on, and they absolutely knocked it out the park. I cannot wait for what's next as I cover more games in this series. But first, a message.
Man, this is so hard. Alright, here we go. Hey guys, this is my outro. I know this is probably not how you were expecting the video to end, but I like to shake things up. I like to do creative things, like that fourth wall break in the Arkham Asylum video that I actually spent a lot of time on, just lighting it, and I don't think it looks the greatest, and this is the next step of that. This is the next evolution where I get to talk with you guys one-on-one, and maybe you guys can learn a bit about me. I've been passionate about video games, and I started this channel as an outlet to kind of talk about that and progress my skills in editing and storytelling, and just have fun at the same time. And this is that. So let me know what you guys want to see next. I know that Resident Evil 4 2005 won the poll that I made a couple weeks ago. And sorry, I thought there was a person there. It's very awkward filming in public. But anyway, yeah, Resident Evil 4 2005 won the poll, so I plan to do a video on that soon, but it might be down the line. We'll see. I want to finish the Arkham games, because those are games I'm passionate about. I like those ones. But yeah, stay tuned for future videos and future creativity. Hopefully future videos will be just as exciting and surprising. But yeah, bye guys.